It says a lot about your film when on the poster the star's name is actually bigger than the title. You know really what's selling this film, don't you? Jack Reacher 2, Jack Reacher Never Go Back, is the most aptly titled film of the year so far, in such a way that I never ever want to go back and see this film ever again. It was just beyond abysmal, really. Now, I admittedly have not seen the first Jack Reacher, but I know a bit about the books and a bit about the character, and I know what this film is, and honestly, I went into this film knowing nothing about the original. Well, as I just said, that was a bit hypocritical, wasn't it? It's always a good start, that. I went into this film knowing really very little about the character. I knew a bit about it, and honestly, all you need to know is he's a government agent who's pretty good at killing people and pretty good at being Tom Cruise. Because really, there is no connection to the first film as far as I'm aware. There was nothing I didn't understand in the film. It was just a dull, boring, uneventful, unexciting, un-everything film. And honestly, it has very, very, very few redeeming qualities to it. So, it's directed by Edward Zwick, who has done a few films with Tom Cruise before, including The Last Samurai, which has got very good reviews, and a few other films that he's done have all pretty much got good reviews and have been pretty widely acclaimed. So I think a lot of people were very excited by the concept of this film being Tom Cruise and Edward Zwick again, because they've done a couple of good films together, and now they're back again for Jack Reacher Never Go Back. And the first Jack Reacher didn't do fantastically. It wasn't a film that did ridiculously well, and probably wasn't a film that was desperately calling for a sequel. It stars Tom Cruise, Cobie Smulders, and Danika Johnson. So the basic plot of the film is that Jack Reacher has kind of a thing going on with Cobie Smulders, and then Cobie Smulders gets arrested, and then it's kind of like breaking them out and doing other things. I don't know what I'm doing with my hands. If you haven't noticed already, I like to move my hands a lot, and I'm not 100% sure why I like to move my hands a lot, but it helps me communicate and helps me get along with things. So if it gets really annoying, I am really sorry, but I kind of have the Anne Hathaway in Alice Through the Looking Glass syndrome. And if you haven't seen that, that's a reference that you need to get, because it's pretty on point with what I am. Because it's literally just me, just like grabbing the air every so often. So the whole concept of the film is that Tom Cruise and Cobie Smulders are on it, and Cobie Smulders gets arrested, and then they're trying to break out and get back together, and in a way escape the government, and there's a whole government conspiracy theory, and it's very, very much Jason Bourne crossed with James Bond to make a really, really, like, retarded child. Because this is, I mean, the only films I can compare it to are Jason Bourne and James Bond, and it's not on par with either of those. This is a film that is just nowhere near as good as those. You don't have that central character which has the chemistry with other characters. You don't have that Bond girl chemistry that Cobie Smulders tries to have with Jack Reacher. And you don't have the cool, badass moments that Jason Bourne has. It just kind of creates the bad parts of all the franchises and mixes them together. Which means you've got Jason Bourne's underutilised villains, and you've got James Bond's kind of sometimes boring action set pieces. And honestly, it just becomes a mess, a dull, boring mess, because I didn't care about any of the characters, and I just didn't want to watch this film halfway through it. It doesn't help your film when you're bored halfway through and you just want it to end, and it just goes on and on and on and on, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, when's this film going to end? Because it's on for an hour too long, and it's only, I think it's over a 2-hour-long film, and that's way too long for this sort of film, because it seems to be something that's short, snappy, and straight to the point, and it needs a good villain and a good plot, and honestly, it has neither of those, especially a good villain. It needed a really, really good villain, and instead, it has Robert Knepper, who is teabagged from Prison Break, and honestly, as a side note, I have met Robert Knepper, one of the nicest people I've ever met. Not the best role he's ever been in. In fact, it's probably one of his worst ever roles. He appears in the film for 5 to 6 minutes and is a really useless, unnecessary villain for the film, and it kind of gets conflicted with multiple other villains, and it suffers from the same issue the Magnificent Seven had, in the fact that it doesn't show the villain hardly at all. So when the villain finally does appear, you just don't care. I just didn't care at all for him. I wasn't scared by him. I didn't want to like him. I didn't like Jack Reacher. I didn't like Cobie Smulders' character, and we're not even getting into the daughter part. So there is an entire subplot of this film in which Tom Cruise has possibly a daughter, and it's kind of like, is he the daughter? Is he Tom Cruise's daughter? Is he not Tom Cruise's daughter? And that is literally the only question you'll ask, because she appears for like half an hour and you just don't care for her at all. It's another character just added to the mix. It's an unnecessary subplot that isn't developed enough. There isn't enough tension in it, and it just seems really pointless, because all she does is do ridiculously stupid things. They tell her not to do something, so she immediately goes to do it, and I don't understand. I don't understand how a character can be written so stupidly. It's just ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. The soundtrack's bland and boring. The cinematography's cheap and nasty. Tom Cruise is obviously just here for the paycheck. I'm surprised at how, like, cheaping out Cobie Smulders is. Most of the other cast you don't care about. There is not a single character you care about. There's no emotional moments. There's, like, a bit of sexual tension between Tom Cruise and Cobie Smulders, but even that's not relieved in the end. It's just kind of there. And you don't ever get that kind of relief. There are certain films where you have two characters which you just really want to get together, and there is that brilliant chemistry with them, and you just really want them to get together, and that'll make you happy. But no, it just strings and strings you along, and then it just kind of ends. And honestly, it just ends. There is no satisfying conclusion. There's no big final action set piece, and there is no memorable moments in this film at all. This is a film that you should definitely avoid. I can't honestly say anything good about this film. It was a boring, dull slog that just didn't entertain me at all. I go to the cinema for escapism. I don't want to be wanting to escape the cinema. This film was truly an awful film, and I'm not going to be watching the first Jack Reacher because, honestly, this was just awful. An awful film. I'm going to give Jack Reacher Never Go Back 1 star out of 5. I hope you enjoyed that review. If you did enjoy that review, please give me a like, please give me a subscribe, and even more importantly, comment down below if you've seen Jack Reacher, and if you think it was as awful as I've really made it out to be, because it was just boring film. Never getting them 2 hours back, am I? No, but in all seriousness, please check out the podcast. If you do like this, please stick around because we've got so much more. We've got reviews of Inferno, we've got reviews of The Accountant, we've got reviews of Ouija Origin of Evil, we've got reviews here on My Week in Media. This is only the beginning. I really hope you enjoyed this. My name is Dawson, this is My Week in Media, and that was my review of Jack Reacher Never Go Back.